Okay, what I'm going to do tonight, unlike the last four presentations, this one's not educational. This one's just for fun. I decided to pick out some of my favorite rock art images just to share them with everybody. There won't be any heavy analysis, so I'm not going to try to tell you which culture it's from, although sometimes I know and sometimes I don't. And we're going to look beyond Utah. We'll look at Utah a lot and then look at some of the surrounding states. I know I've left out some really great places like Dinwoody and Texas Rock Art because I haven't seen those, so I don't have any pictures of those. So let's just get it rolling. Okay, we're starting out up north and moving south in Utah. So this one is in Vernal in the Dinosaur National Monument, definitely a Fremont image. And you probably notice, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
You know, these things that are hanging out of their hands are thought to be heads. We'll talk about that some more as we go. So in the next one, these are from McConkey Ranch, which is a private property, but a public site in that you are allowed and encouraged to go there. You pay a little bit when you go. And again, you can see the one on the left. This is definitely a head that's hanging down there. These were pretty gruesome people, I think. And then you got the Bigfoot guy on the right side of your screen. And he's also got a head hanging down. This is also at McConkey Ranch. It's called, what's it called? The Three Kings, I think. And I really am intrigued by this one. It's done completely in the negative, where they just chipped away everything to leave the natural color of the rock to make your image. Our main character in the middle, this one here, has got a huge shield in his hand, and out of it you've got a stick, and then you've got another head hanging down right there. This site is up high. It's a little harder to photograph than some others. All right, moving down to 9 Mile Canyon. If you've been there, you know there's thousands of images there, and I'm just going to show you maybe 3 or 4, I don't know. On the left is the hunting scene, famous hunting scene, and then on the right, I really like this spiral that turns into a horned serpent. Yeah, it's one of my favorite images there. And next you have the I think it's called, some people call it the family panel, but you've got the, I assume like the father and the mother, and then this is Junior here, and this is probably Junior's pet scorpion or something along that line. And it's a great image. It's not a great photograph, but that's the only time I was there, and there was a lot of sun on it. Okay, San Rafael Swell. And actually, this picture is from the San Rafael Reef. It's one of the greatest places for rock art. If you haven't been there, URARA does a lot of field trips there. We'll probably have a real field trip there next year, but we can have a little virtual one right now. This one's called the Black Dragon Panel, and it's an extreme misnomer. First of all, as you can see, it is not black. I mean, how could somebody call it the Black Dragon, right? And then if you look at this in D-stretch, you can actually see what's going on. So what you have here is a big snake coming in with a huge mouth, gonna bite this guy in the butt. You can see his head up here with 2 eyes. He's got tiny arms coming out. And then this is somebody doing something up here. And there's some sheep walking away over here. Has nothing to do with dragons or with what that person chalked. Now this one is, if you're trying to figure out what's on that panel, you probably can't see much of anything. And that's the way it usually looks when you go there. In fact, this is the best picture I've ever seen of it because it's not in the sun. But with D-stretch, you can see that there is actually a whole lot going on here. If you blew all this up and look close, you could talk for half an hour just on this panel. And maybe, oh, I don't know, 100, 200 yards away from that is this one. I like the way that they painted it, and then they scratched designs in the paint. And I've never figured out if that's a head with 3 things going off of it, up and to the side, or whether that's a beak. I don't have any idea. Now this panel is a pretty long hike, but I think that it's actually, I think there's a short way into it. I haven't proven it yet, but it's a spectacular panel, Barrier Canyon style panel. We're going to look closely at each of the 3 sections, starting at the top. So take a look at that, the guy with the magic fingers. And I really wonder about those things that are flying away from his hands. I like to call them flying hairballs, and I'm sure that's not what they are. But we'll see them again several times. So this is part of the top part of the panel. Here is the middle part of the panel. That sort of looks like a rainbow with rain coming down from it, but I could be wrong about that. I really do wonder about this symbol, which appears 3 times. And oops. And so anyway, very intriguing. And now we have the lower part of the panel, not in quite as good a condition, but here we've got, where's my cursor? We've got another guy with his hands out like that first one we saw. Okay, moving on. We're still in the reef. There is so much in the San Rafael Reef. You can see I tried to get this whole panel into one picture. It's very hard to do because you don't have a lot of room up there and the angle's rough. So we'll start from right and move to left. This is the right side of the panel. I'm very much intrigued by this guy who's holding a plant, and he's got roots coming out of his feet. And then farther to the left, you've got this group of people, and these aren't, I mean, these are people. These aren't supernatural beings, and they're walking towards something. And in this next slide, you can see what that something is. Our walkers are in the lower right, but you've got that large BCS figure in the middle, and that snake, a drooling snake with horns flying right towards him. It's like that one we saw, Black Dragon, with the snake flying towards somebody to bite him. Now, this next site is also in the swell. It's not as often visited, a bit of a hike. And I think this long thing, it looks to me like a centipede. But I'm really interested in that character on the right. And if we look at that character on the right, you see you've got some kind of an animal head. The arm that's reaching out towards the centipede looks sort of like a human arm. And then the other arm reaching back is like a bird wing. And then the legs at the bottom sort of turn into something really snaky. This next image is also at site. It's an interesting site. I took some people there on a URARA field trip a couple years ago. Maybe it was 3 years ago. I'm getting old. It's probably 8 years ago. But anyway, I took some people there. It's a fun place to visit. You want to get there before noon. When the sun hits at afternoon, it wipes out a lot of the imagery. And this is one of the most famous panels in the swell. That is the top of the swell. And at least the top, I should say the top for where you cross it on I-70. And if you look at this site and then turn your back to the rock art, you're going to, that's how close it is to it. But look at how carefully painted this is. We're going to get closer, don't worry. And then just, 10, 20 feet to the left, this is the rest of the site. So let's get closer. This is getting closer to the first part. I want you to notice that our main figure in the middle, both hands and feet have holes in them. And then this sort of a dog person over here, same thing, hands and feet have holes in them, painted that way, not something somebody made later. And then this is the figure in best shape over to the left. And you can see up close, this guy's got a snake in his hand. We've got some more of those flying hairball things, whatever they are. And you notice the birds flying up and down around the horns on the head. That's another motif that's fairly common in the Barrier Canyon style imagery. This one's also in the swell. I've been there once a long time ago. I don't have a clue in the world where it is. I couldn't take you there if I wanted to. I don't remember. But an interesting site. And I especially am interested in this character with whatever's going on here. Okay, Buckhorn Wash is not just a public site, an extremely public site. It's got its own parking lot. It's got its own bathroom. I mean, that's really service, right? And there's a lot of imagery there. It probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 yards long at least. And some of it was badly damaged and it's been repaired. You can see some of these characters, but look in the lower right-hand part of this picture. You can't really see a whole lot. But with D-stretch, you see there were figures down there. They're not in as good a shape as some of the others. But there's just a lot going on if you try to figure this one out, analyze it. And then moving to the left of that group, you've got this group here, which is my favorite part of Buckhorn. You've got this group of tall, skinny things, and then this is another group of tall, skinny things like it's farther away. And then this is another one, even farther away. I do read 3D perspective in a lot of this. So to get closer, you can see all three of those groups. And we can get even closer. Look at the detail here. All these things going on. Some of them you can recognize as anthropomorphic, sort of a bird person over here. Oh, we got a flying hairball down here, whatever that is. I don't know what these things are, but we see them in many places. Lots of little birds and animals, a lot going on. This next one's deep. It's not as public, say, as Buckhorn, but if you know where it is, it's not a long walk to get to it. Not in such good condition, but D-stretch helps a lot. So on the right, you've got this big, fat, drooling snake. And then I really like the stuff coming out of their heads. It's like fireworks coming out of their heads. I have no idea. I haven't seen that anywhere else. Is also in the swell. And these are a little hard to photograph for me because I don't have fancy equipment. Francois's got much, much, much better picture of this than I'll ever have. But this is what that one panel looks like, except for it would look a lot better if I had a long lens and could really get it with good light. And this next one called, that's not a public site, but URARA field trips go there regularly, I think. Very intriguing. Let's get a little closer. So this central character is another hybrid. The head is the head of a female bighorn sheep. The tongue is a snake. The torso is a human-like torso, and so are the arms. But you've got a tail of a canine, coyote, or a wolf. And then the feet are bird feet. Notice that the sheep are going to this character from both sides. These are ascending, and these are ascending without the zigzag. But look on the other side, these two very strange looking characters, the sheep originate there and go out in each direction. You can see that a little better with the D-stretch, but when I noticed the first time I did D-stretch was this horned serpent over here. I had never even noticed that before. It's a very intriguing panel. One point I want to make as we look at this is that if you're around my age, when we were kids, Indians, well, Native Americans were called Indians, and it was all about feather headdresses, totem poles, tomahawks, and woo, 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 that kind of stuff, you know. But this is what it was really about. And rock art gives us a window into the intellectual culture, not only of past Native American cultures, but of present ones. Okay, also in the swell, Rochester Creek is a public site. You see a hominid over there on the left to give you some scale. And there's a tremendous amount of imagery here, all kinds of imagery. We'll just look at a little bit. So in this first one, there's that motif again. The flying snake with arms going right for that guy's head. I've always really liked these animals. These are the best done creatures I think I've seen in petroglyphs. They're running, they've got teeth and tongues, lots of detail. There's a couple more of them, but notice that this line that goes all the way from top to bottom of the rock has actually got a head on it and a body like it's alive. It's a line person. Okay, now we go to the Moab area. Thompson. Thompson is just north of I-70, just north of the town of Thompson. Very easy to find. For those of you who aren't terribly mobile, this is about as easy a site to get to as you'll see. You can park right next to it. No hiking involved. There are 3 large panels. This is the archaic one. It's the only one we'll look at here. But around the corner to the left is a big panel that's part Fremont and part archaic. And then across a little ravine is a Ute panel. So it's a great place to get a feeling for the different styles. So looking more closely at part of this archaic panel. Some good details left here. D-stretch helps to define those a little bit better. And next we're going to look at the character in the lower right-hand corner of your image. This one. I'd never really paid much attention to this one till I started playing around with D-stretch at this panel. And D-stretch helps to define the imagery. But what really intrigues me is this. It looks like a plant, and it really sort of looks like a mushroom. Might not be, but it might be. And the fact that this arm just sort of turns into something different and connects to it. I really wish the face had not flaked off. I'd love to see what it looked like. North of Moab, about 10 miles. But look at this site. And by the way, this is in an alcove that is probably, it's probably close to a quarter-mile long, the alcove. There are other rock art sites in it, but this is the main one. Notice that our main character here, this is one arm, one hand, looks totally different from the other one. And then if you go down and look at the feet, they're totally different from each other. But the real shocker here is what happens with de-stretch. When I de-stretched this, I couldn't believe it. Look at all that in yellow. It's really, really faint with the naked eye and in natural light. But look at what comes out. All kinds of other things were going on there in yellow. In fact, in a field trip I've led many times in Moab, we would do the afternoon. So these can be done in a day. So this is just think that it's a bag, that it's a bag decorated with a snake design with feathers on the bottom. But I could be wrong. It's only, I don't know, maybe 1.5 feet tall, maybe 2 feet at the very most. Very, very detailed. This is the figure on the right side of those three. Those things sort of look like wings. I doubt that that's what they are, but notice that there's a piece of a plant in each side, and they're different. Up in the up here, you've got what I think are hummingbirds. These are probably insects over here. A lot of detail. And notice at the top is a rain cloud with rain coming out of it. This character over here has got a head that looks like a prickly pear. I doubt if that's what it's supposed to be. And then, if you get a little closer, you can see that our main character's got blue eyes and a blue snake for a mouth. Oh, about, I don't know, is this petroglyph site. This is just a part of it. Notice that you've got a Barrier Canyon style image, but this is in a formative era panel, I believe. These people are paying their homage or whatever to that one. I don't know if that's the case or not. I'll say this, if you go there, you sort of have to risk your life to get out in front of it to take a good picture, but it's certainly possible to do so. If you had a long lens, you'd get a good picture from down below. I realized when I put all this together, I had almost no abstract sites in there, so I threw this one in. This is it's not a bad trail in terms of difficulty, and this is a very abstract design that just looks to me like a pottery design. put on rock. Also in Moab, and by the way, I lived in Moab for 22 years, so you know I've been to all these sites a lot. This is the owl, very well made, and probably quarter to a half mile away is the. But you can see those both within an hour or so of each other very easily. Also in Moab, if you go to the BLM office or to that visitor center probably, they've got a brochure of common rock art sites that you can get to around the area. And for anybody who hasn't been there, or beginner or whatever, it's a good way to get started. Okay. I did a survey in the Moab area, quite a long time ago now. And one thing I did as a part of that was survey, and I found 75 rock art sites in an 11-mile stretch. I'm sure I didn't get them all. And actually there's 3 miles in there where there was no rock art because there's no surfaces to put them on. So really it's 75 sites in 8 miles. That's about 10 per mile. That's a lot of rock art. But this one is a favorite of mine. If you like music, you can see why. This guy is playing the flute and dancing. And I can't help but think that those undulating lines are sound. And at this particular site, there are 14 flute players. This was definitely a music place. And here are 2 more of them. I'm not sure if it's relevant or not, but this was the only site that I could, in the area where I could see the mountain, LaSalle Mountains from the site. Okay, moving to these. 25 years ago, you could drive to fairly close, have a fairly short hike to get to see these. Now you got to backpack because that road's been closed now for about 25 years. There's no road left, even no indication of a road anymore. These 4 look sort of cartoonish to me, but they're all different and there's a lot of detail. And these are the, and they look a lot more serious to me. Notice that on the shoulders, they've got those, whatever those decorations are, but the one in the middle doesn't have that. Or, yeah, I was gonna say it could be covered by the others, but I don't think so. I think the one in the middle is meant to be different. There and really nowhere else. This is also in the same general area. This is 2 more. I think it's 11, but good detail. And this is definitely a public site in the sense that it's right on the map they have, but it's not that easy to find. I know the first time I went there, I was crawling through bushes and I finally found it. It's not that bad anymore, but still, it's a little hard to get to. And again, this one you used to be able to day hike to, and now it's definitely, well, you can day hike to it if you don't mind doing about 20 miles, but that's not really a day hike for people our age. So it's a backpack. I haven't been back there since the days when I could drive back there. You can sort of tell from this picture, it's a slide. So this back in the days of slide film. Now, this is Dave Manley's picture. I don't know if Dave's on here tonight, but this one is in most of the time. In fact, every time I've been to it, except for this particular day I was with Dave, was the only time the sun wasn't on it. Because we were going to go camping back there, and so we were there late in the day. When the sun's not on it, you can see a good bit, but Dave has taken the image. He's de-stretched it, then he's returned it to something close to natural colors, and you can just see how much is actually there. If you looked at this during the day, it would just look like some red smudges. You can't see much beyond that. But it's a very fantastic panel. Thank you, Dave. Horseshoe Canyon is on the west side of Canyonlands. It used to be a separate annex, and I don't know, there's been so much change and everything. I don't know whether it's still that or whether it's incorporated in the main part. But to me, the Great Gallery is the premier rock art site in North America. That's just me. This isn't all of it. It's about 100 yards long. The character on the far right is about 9 feet tall. So that gives you an idea of the size of some of these. Most of these characters, like through here, are 5 or 6 feet tall. So we'll look at some details. I have given many presentations on the Great Gallery, and there's just so much there. So this one you couldn't even see in that last picture. It's off to the left of that last picture. But in this one, you've got a natural arc in the rock, and above it, you've got these supernatural looking figures. But off to the right, you've got a human looking figure with arms and legs. And we're going to look a little closer at him or her. You'll notice that this person is wearing a garment, an animal skin. You can see parts of it hanging down next to the legs. But with de-stretch, you can see that what is in the right hand is a stick with an arrowhead shape at the bottom and probably feathers at the top. I think this has something to do with some kind of ceremony. This is the most famous group at the Great Gallery. It's called the Holy Ghost Group. I don't really like that name, but excuse me, the main character is about 7 feet tall. When I see this, I see perspective. I think that all these other ones, like these smaller ones, they're farther back in the rock. Everybody here is coming out towards you or possibly going back in. But the only one that's at the surface of the rock is our main character. And he or she, there's really no indication of gender in any of these, is definitely, that draws your eye. When you look at this panel, you look right at that face. And notice that the face has some 3D depth. This little thing right here is showing us on the side of the head, so it's giving you some depth. This is another group in the Great Gallery. And I put this in partly because I like it, but also look at these sheep down here. If anybody thinks that these people could not make realistic artwork, these sheep are about as realistically done as they could be. And they're all different. They're in motion. I didn't put a close-up of them on here, but really intriguing, really spectacular artwork. Okay, next we have the most intricately decorated character at the Great Gallery. You can see that you've got two anthropomorphs within the body, and you've got an animal on each shoulder. But with de-stretch, you can see you've got a parade of sheep going across the torso and then turning and going back up towards the other shoulder. You don't see that unless you de-stretch. And Francois was the first one that showed that for me to see it. And here is that within context of the other things around it. So you see you've got a line of sheep that come all the way out to connect it to the next character on the panel. Great Gallery, that's the best rock art site I've been to. It's about a 6 or 7 mile hike and well worth it. Still in Canyonlands, but now you see Steve Acerson down there in the lower right. And this, again, this is a public panel in the sense that it's on their map. They don't mind a bit if you go to see it. It's a bit of work to get there, a long four-wheel drive, and then the hike. The hike's not very long, but it's got its moments for some people if you don't like steep things. And this is only a part of the imagery, but it's the main part. And I want to get a little bit closer to what's on the right side there. So this person with the big hand coming out of the middle finger is a plant that is so intricately painted that you can tell right away that's Indian ricegrass, no doubt about it. And it's hard to see without D-stretch, and I didn't put the D-stretch on here, but this person has roots, not legs. Well, it has roots and legs. And then it's called, because there are two of these characters. This person has a burden basket on his or her back, and you can't really see it, but there's a harvesting tool in the hand. Also, and this character is often referred to as a shaman. It's pretty hard to argue with that, but you've definitely got a human being here, arms and legs. In the left hand, you've got a branch of an evergreen. In the right hand, you got a stick with feathers on it. This person is wearing a dress-like garment and is clearly wearing a mask. Okay, this one's not a public site, but it sure is a great panel. We're going to look a little bit at the one on the left. Lots of detail here. And with D-stretch, you can see that stripe that looks very blue. It may have been blue. It may have also been black. D-stretch changes colors. But there was red and white in that third color, definitely, in the painting of this character. I just threw this in. It's not the greatest image, but look at the size. And some of the, and I think this is archaic, some of the archaic artwork is so detailed and so small. This one, by the way, is really hard to get to. Also in the greater Canyonlands area, this one's called part of it. And the dragons are up at the top. Dragonflies, not dragons. And you can see them right here. This one is very seldom seen. And I'm sure not going to tell you where it is. But it looks like a person with big wings, feathered wings. And when you de-stretch, these are starting to look like people out here. I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Okay, now we move to the Bluff area. This is a famous image on Comb Ridge. And this one is I've never figured that out. I always called it but look at how detailed this is. This person even has calves and thighs, and everything is extremely well done. Very artistic. And no, I don't know what these are, but they're pretty common. This is not a great picture, but I tried to get as much of it in as one picture as I could. All these little people. You've got this circle, and these people are either going into or out of it. It reminds me of migration myths of Native Americans in the Southwest. So this one is in. I always just liked all the work inside the body. It almost looks Egyptian to me. I mean, it isn't, but I mean. And then this is at the main site at Sand Island, the one with the fence and everything. I really like it because I really like this sheep playing a flute. And not too far away is this site. It is an absolutely spectacular petroglyph site. I've been told that now you can drive around to get to it, which didn't used to be the case. I lived in Kayenta, Arizona for 4 years, and I would go up to this area a lot. And I had figured out a way to hike into it. And I did that one time and went down there and had to go through a fenced area, corral, not a corral, but a fenced area where there were some cows down by the river. They didn't care about me. I just went through and went out the other side and went over to the panel. Everything was just fine. And as I came back, there was a bull at the gate waiting for me. And it was, it was kicking the ground and steam pouring out of its ears, just like in a cartoon. I mean, this guy was serious. I was so glad there was that fence between me and him. And then he just stuck his horn under that fence and threw the gate wide open and came out. And so we had a little chess match as I was sort of walking fast. I knew if I ran, he'd be running. He was walking, I was walking. We were eyeing each other. And then finally I ran to the cliff and climbed up on the cliff to about 20 feet. And he just stayed there waiting for me to come down so he could mess me up. So I had to climb the cliff to get out of there. It was memorable. Now you can drive in there. That's not nearly as much fun. So here's a detail. And this is supposed to be a basket maker panel primarily. This one is also from that general area. I love the guy on the shoulder and then these details, the bones in the hand and in the feet. I don't think this one gets seen as often. It's in the same area, but it's and same kind of imagery. These feet are pretty impressive. It's a neat sight. There's a lot more there too. Okay, moving to Cedar Mesa. Lots of color. And notice this bird right here with the eye of a different color. I just wonder how that thing looked when it was freshly painted. I bet it looked impressive. You have this panel. If any of you needed evidence that aliens are in rock art, this is it. I mean, this is right out of like Star Trek or you know, something like that, right? Maybe the Outer Limits. Maybe it'd be more like the Outer Limits. But anyway, I gave a presentation. I was a high school teacher. I gave a presentation to the students at the high school in Moab. And it was well attended, and they were very paying a lot of attention, being really good. And the most common question I got afterwards, and a lot of these kids I already knew them, so they weren't shy about talking to me. The most common question was, is it true that all of the rock art was made by aliens? And I didn't know where the heck they were getting that from. And then somebody told me it was on a TV show called Ancient Aliens. So anyway, we got a lot of work to do with education, I'll put it that way. And this is one of those heads. We saw heads earlier. Archaeologists have found some of these heads, you know, and they take the skull out. And in this case, it looks like they painted up the skin. You can barely see it, but there is a loop right on the top that would be used to hold it. This is another seldom visited site. I went to it when I was about 30 years old, and it was very difficult to get there then, which means that to go there today, I would probably need a helicopter with a rope that could drop me in there or something along that line. But look at that. I've never seen any other rock art look like that. And there's also a sizable ruin at this site. We're going to get a little closer with D-stretch. You can see that there was a crudely made design in red, and this went over top of it. But I'm really interested in the geometry here, those triangles, what that was all about. I have no idea. Okay, this site is called Moon House. I expect some of you have been there. That's my son. He's now in his mid-20s, so you know this was taken a while ago. And this is sort of inside. There's a retaining wall outside and then these walls are inside of it. This design painted on the wall goes across and goes into this room, goes all the way around the inside of the room, and then comes out again and continues over here. And inside of that, scratched into the white paint, not scratched, but carefully made in the white paint, is a full moon and a crescent moon opposite each other in the room. And that's why it's called Moon House. It's right along the road, as I remember. And you've got this, looks like a duck head. I asked a Navajo elder one time, and then, you know, obviously his people didn't make this rock art, but I said, you know, what do you think about these duck heads and sheep heads and all that? And he said, oh, it's just their clan, I'm sure. That's actually a very logical answer. And it might be the case and it might not. But that could explain some things like that. Hanksville. I've just got one image from Hanksville. It's a very unique one. It's on granite, which you don't see that very often. And with D-stretch, you can see that this guy has got 3 writhing snakes in one hand and 2 in the other hand. So I would say you're not a tough guy unless you can do that. But he did. And a lot of neat imagery at this place. Indication that this is female or male, but it's neat. It's up in an alcove just off the side of the road. You can see it from the road if you know where to look. Escalante, I've only got one picture because I haven't done a lot in Escalante to see rock art, and I know there's rock art all over the place. This whole thing could be on that, but I picked this image because it's different. Somebody thought these were like sewing needles or something. I don't think that's got anything to do with it, but very interesting and different imagery at this site. Okay, Parowan Gap is off the Colorado Plateau and west of Interstate 15. This is a site that is well developed. There is a paved road that goes right through the gap, and you can go there, you can park. It's got a bathroom, and on the summer solstice, there's a big um, gathering there with experts to talk about it, and they talk about some of the astronomical aspects. And this thing called the zipper glyph, the main thing you're looking at, is considered to be a map of the area where this is Parowan Gap. This is the Roundish Valley on the east side of the gap. And then these would have something to do with the where the sun is going down on the different solstices. Um, it's a neat site. There's all kinds of imagery there. You can spend a lot of time there. Well, now we go to the Kanab area. I live in Kanab now, and there's some interesting rock art here. This is another thing. This is a site called Mansard, and it's a public site. If you come to Kanab, you can go to, there's 2 visitor centers or even the grocery stores, and they have these little one-page sort of a pamphlet kind of thing of things to see around the Kanab area, and several of them are rock art sites that are, you know, accessible. Mansard it's not hard to find, but you do have to climb to the top of the Vermilion Cliffs to get there. The trail's good and easy, but still, you got to climb. But what the heck is this? My first thought looking at it is a hummingbird, but that's probably not it. But if you look closely, you can see slightly scratched lines going from that middle hole out to these things. I have no idea what it is. Could be something to do with a calendar, or I don't know. This one is called the Maze site. And actually, this is just one bit of imagery at a site that has a whole lot more imagery. But this is my favorite part of it. I have never seen a maze so carefully made in a petroglyph. And then I just love this 2-headed snake coming out of the coil, like it's going to either entering the maze or guarding the maze. And then you've got this person with a centipede across the legs. And somebody pointed out to me this dot down here, sort of like you are here, maybe entering the maze. And many of you have probably been here, but about a year, maybe 2 years ago, they built a parking lot, and there's like a kiosk with information about it and everything now. It's very much a public site. They also changed the trail in so it doesn't go through a ruin anymore. And it's definitely meant to be visited. This site it's got a pretty clumsy name. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of imagery here. It's things painted on top of each other. It's in a magnificent alcove in a spectacularly beautiful canyon. And we'll look closely at a little bit of it. So here you've got 2 guys in brown on the left, but now you can see that that thing in the middle was actually a person for sure, but there's an outline in brown. Here's another one. It's another group of 3. And with D-stretch, you can see that there is another person here, and then there's a lot more going on down here that we couldn't see without D-stretch. This site is a great one for D-stretch because there are a lot of colors and there's a lot of layers. This petroglyph site is intriguing to me because I think these are all burden baskets, and they're different. Each one's different from the other. And I haven't seen that kind of a design anywhere else. It's in Arizona, but it's pretty close to Kanab. I led a field trip there last year. It's a 12-mile hike if you want to see it all. And it's a very easy 12-mile hike, but it's still 12 miles. You don't get any rock art imagery until you're about 2.5 miles in, or at least not any of the really good imagery. And then it's pretty much continuous until you've gone in about 6 miles. And then you just have to turn around and walk back out. There is another way in. It's going down a very steep and loose slope. I feel like if you can do that, you can easily walk 12 miles because I would say it's dangerous going in that way. So I'll just show you a few images. At the end. Okay, de-stretch. These characters are both wearing those V-neck 1950s tennis sweaters. So I'm not sure what that's all about. And then this group, it's probably about 10 or 12 feet off the ground. The character in the middle is probably about 4 feet tall. I don't know what that line is up on the top. I've never been there before. But anyway, I like the way this is done so simply with a little bit of geometry. And then these are all fingerprints, thumbprints, I think, down below. Okay, now that green thing's going to be, can you see this? Well, I don't need to ask you. Anyway, it showed up. I don't know what it is. This is my favorite site in my neighborhood. There are 2 sites in the neighborhood, and I really like this one. On the right, you've got a stick figure, and he's got an atlatl in one hand and an atlatl dart in the other hand, and he's holding them up like he's happy or celebrating. And then if you look on the left side, you can see why, because that guy's got an atlatl dart right through his neck. So if somebody were going to write a history of violent crime in Kanab, this would have to go into chapter 1. Okay, the Grand Canyon. These are very, very difficult sites to reach. I don't recommend going there. This one's maybe the easiest one, and it's a 7-mile hike with a 1,700-foot elevation change. It's not for everybody. But up here in this ledge, this is all rock art up here. So we're going to look at some details. This group, they're tall and thin, and they're all crowded together, shoulder to shoulder. They're all different. And the 2 tallest ones are about 7 feet tall. With de-stretch, you can see some more details. After studying this, I decided that this is probably a group portrait. And most likely, this is the Western Archaic basketball champions. I mean, think about it, 2 7-footers, and it's the team portrait. Well, maybe not, but who knows? Who knows? Excuse me. This is also in that same area. And I have never seen rock art imagery that looks like this. I have never seen anything like that anywhere else. Very unique and unusual. This is called the Esplanade style or Grand Canyon polychrome. And it's considered to be archaic. Here's another group. And with de-stretch enhancement, you can see some details a little better. As you can see, this site has a lot of overlapping things have painted on top of other things. And it's hard to unravel it all. Now, right here, this is the confirming the convincing evidence of the basketball hypothesis. I mean, you can't get any more obvious than that, right? But when you think about it, look at, isn't that a mythic image? Just totally a mythic image. Now, this is a site I haven't been to. I tried to get to it. I failed. I will get there someday. Very difficult. It might take a 4-day backpack. But I picked this one, and you can see it better in the D stretch. If anybody thinks that these people did not understand 3D perspective and how to reduce 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions, take a look at that. That is as 3D as you can get. I don't know what it is. It might be a fish trap. I don't know what it is. That doesn't matter. The artwork is what matters to me. This is also at the same site. It's on the ceiling. So you've got 4 people with their heads at the top of that picture, and then one person with its upside down. These are the 4 at the top. Look at the painting done here. And with D-stretch, it's even better. This is another one of those sites you need a helicopter to get to, and it would be illegal, but probably worth it. This is the guy that was upside down in that first picture. Very unusual head. Okay, also in Arizona, in the little Colorado drainage. I really like this image. These 4 are really well done, and then somebody who did that one not nearly as well. But look at the tiny dragonflies in between heads, and snakes as well. It's a really neat image and very unique. Not so far away as this one. I've had this on my desktop, my computer, many times. I just love to look at it. There's a lot going on there. And it doesn't have anything to do with totem poles, headdresses, tomahawks, any of that kind of stuff. This is also in the little Colorado drainage, another favorite panel of mine. It's not terribly far from the Rock Art Ranch, which is a place that you can go to. You got to pay to go in, but it's got some great imagery. But boy, there's a lot in this one. This is another one I like to put on my desktop and just stare at it a lot. This is right next to, or just I don't know, 20 yards away from the one that we just saw. Totally different. I think this is a Hopi image, and probably not terribly old. This is also in the little Colorado drainage. It's called the Mother of Game, and the main character here, she's the Mother of Game. Apparently there are other panels that have this image in it. I haven't seen the other ones, but she gives birth to the game animals. And that's a myth from the Pueblo, and she's in the birthing position right there. Now this one, it's in a little museum at Petrified Forest National Park. And there's a building that was built by Mary Coulter. It's not very far north of Interstate 40 in the park. And the story they give there is that when they were building a road, one of the workers turned this rock over, and this image was on the bottom. It's a pretty spectacular mountain lion image. Here we're still in Arizona. This is not quite as sophisticated as Leonardo's, but the same, sort of the same concept. Sort of a neat image. New Mexico. And I can't do nearly as well with southern New Mexico as Margaret could do. But this is an image from Three Rivers, which is a public site and pretty easily accessible. You can camp there. They got parking lot, bathroom, the whole thing. And you can go for a walk. There are thousands of images at the Three Rivers site. This is just one of them. This one is also from that general area. I really like it. It's got the goggle-eyed person, but it almost looks like a cubist, like Picasso took the body and rearranged it. All right, northern New Mexico. Dineta is the old Navajo area. The Navajos probably made most of the rock art there between 1700 and 1750, so it's not that old. And it's easy to recognize what some of these images are. This one, both of these are Gaskida, that's humpback in English, and he's one of the Navajo supernatural beings. His hump on his back is a rainbow with a feather fringe, and inside of that hump are seeds and mist. He's a fertility of plants character. This one is thought to be the great gambler, Nahuathbihi, of Navajo stories. I could tell the story, but we don't have that much time. I thought this was the most spectacular artwork that I saw in Dineta, and really some of the most spectacular artwork I've ever seen in rock art. So what we have here is a line of dancers. On the right side, that is Sahadul Shai, his French mouth is the name in English. And then next to him, as you're moving to the left, is our humpback character again. And then these four are dancers, and I assume they're female dancers because in Navajo sand paintings, males have round heads and females have rectangular heads. And they are really, really carefully done. If you look at, this is up close of three of the dancers, just look at the detail. De-stretch helps a little bit. They made a petroglyph and then they painted over it. In Navajo sand paintings, when they make a person, they make a tan person, like a naked body, and then they put the clothes on, they decorate it. And it's almost like that here. You had, in petroglyph form, you had the body, and then all the clothes were painted on top. Notice that each one has a sash around the waist with tassels hanging down. Navajo still make those. Navajo word is sis, and they still wear those. Well, I got one image from Colorado. Sorry, Werner, just got one. And this one is actually on private land, so you can't go there unless you've got permission. Now, I did see it on a URARA field trip once, so it's possible you might get to go there, but I just love this image. That's just really classic. Okay, this is the last one I got. I'm probably cheating here by putting California in. It's the Southwest, but then this is in the Mojave, so that's still the desert. And this is on the China Lake Naval Base, I guess is what it's called, right by Ridgecrest. And you can take tours in there. It's the only way you can go in there because it's on the base. This is the best protected rock art probably in the world. It's protected by jet fighters. You can't get much more protected than that. And there are thousands of images in that area. I sort of blew it with my camera that day, so I didn't get a lot of good pictures, but I'll have to go back. But this is one of them. And a lot of detail, a lot of very interesting and unique images. Okay, it's time to say goodbye.